Hey there guys, how are you doing? Welcome back to Rule of Two Review. So a topic that's always on my mind and that I've been wanting to talk about with you guys for the channel recently is surrounding the third-party situation and Nintendo, which I've talked about so many times and we've all talked about so many times. It's kind of always a topic of conversation surrounding Nintendo, and especially now that we live in the time with the post-Nintendo Switch launch and Nintendo's new consoles on the market, there's been so far this big promise of continued and improved third-party support for Nintendo moving forward, which is really exciting to see for a lot of us, myself included. And through that, and through some of the conversations that I've even had, on some of the videos over the course of the past few months, people sometimes seem very questionable over how successful the third-party relationships will turn out to be with Nintendo, and specifically with the Nintendo Switch. Sometimes I like to bring up examples of games that I think might be coming to the Switch or that I would like to see come to the Switch that are third-party titles, and a lot of times some folks certainly support the idea and like the idea, and sometimes some folks seem to think that that game, whatever the game may be, could never truly come to the Nintendo Switch. It really got me thinking about what an improved third-party relationship with Nintendo would actually look like. We've all seen the infographic that Nintendo released the day that they officially showed off the Switch back in October 2016 that had all of these awesome developers listed on it, and it was super exciting. It was what a lot of people wanted to see, to believe that Nintendo could start to make their name and their brand and their console market powerful again and strong again and relevant again. And I guess I shouldn't say relevant again, because they really were relevant even through the years of the Wii U. And with that system being, technically a failure and not selling so well, it still was relevant, and Nintendo always was. If anything, the strong sales of games like Mario Kart and Mario Maker and Smash Brothers, as well as, of course, the 3DS, always did keep them relevant. But still, a lot of us have wanted to see a stronger and more powerful push from Nintendo to make themselves feel strong in the industry again. And for a lot of us, we feel like that third-party situation could really help. I've been singing the third-party song for a long time, and a lot of you guys who've been following Rule of Two Review for that long know that. It's something that I always like to bring up. And yes, Nintendo is my favorite company. I still love the Wii U to death. I absolutely am enamored with the Nintendo Switch. I think it's a wonderful device, and I'm so excited for the future of it. But I'm also one of those hardcore, die-hard Nintendo fans that still loves and supports and appreciates a lot of what's coming from the third-party companies in the industry. And I know that that's controversial because some really bad business practices do come out of some third-party companies, and even some companies that I sometimes really like Ubisoft and EA, so there's definitely a conflict of interests in my own brain that sometimes becomes really hard to sort of reconcile. But at the end of the day, I still think some of the best things in gaming do come from those companies, and it's a completely fine and okay thing to acknowledge and to accept, even as a Nintendo fan. And through that, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of titles, a lot of upcoming titles that we know about, a lot of titles that recently came out in the last couple of months, a lot of titles that are maybe rumored or that we expect to be announced in the next year that I would love to see come to the Nintendo Switch. But again, as I was alluding to a couple of minutes ago, sometimes some people seem to feel like some of these games have no chance in hell at coming to the Switch, either because the Nintendo business model simply won't work with those companies and the games that they're making, or some people seem to think that the Nintendo Switch couldn't even run a lot of these games. Now, that last concept is kind of what I wanted to spend a few minutes riffing on with you guys, and it's something that definitely is an important conversation to have, and there's a lot of merit to both sides of that. Really, when we look at the Nintendo Switch and what it's capable of from a technical aspect, not from a gameplay aspect or a controller aspect or any of that stuff, but simply from a technical aspect, the power under the hood of the Nintendo Switch and what that thing allows us to play and allow developers to create, could a lot of these third-party games really come to the Nintendo Switch? This, of course, is a tricky conversation for me because, as most of you guys know, I'm not really good with the technical specs kind of thing. I can't tell you what GPUs and CPUs and RAM space and RAM speeds or whatever. I don't know what that stuff makes possible and impossible on different machines. I don't really understand these components. It's not my bag. But what I do have is 30 years of gaming experience and 30 years of Nintendo experience and just understanding everything in the industry and really what games can truly look like and what can be achieved on different machines. And I think that still counts for a lot, and I feel pretty comfortable talking about what I think could and couldn't be possible on the Nintendo Switch, just based on my feeling as a gamer with, like I said, 30 years of experience. So there are a lot of games to me that seem really, really interesting that I would love to see come to the Nintendo Switch, because I'd like to see these games help improve the relations of Nintendo and these companies, and also of the gamers who've maybe strayed away from Nintendo or don't find Nintendo interesting. And that really is something that third-party games can help with. And I know that there is I don't want to say a huge conglomerate. I think that there is a sizable conglomerate of gamers out there, Nintendo fans, that kind of seem to sort of have their head in the sand when it comes to the third-party situation, and seem to think that, oh, there's no benefit to the third-party companies and to those games. We don't want that trash on our Nintendo console. It doesn't belong there. Nintendo doesn't need them, and all these different things. And to those people I say, that's a nice, romantic idea, and I appreciate your dedication to Nintendo and your passion and your support for them and the fact that you believe in them that much. I also believe in them that much, but not to the point of not being realistic. And if we look at wanting to see Nintendo become the most successful they can be, the kind of success that they saw in the Super Nintendo era and in the Nintendo Wii era, you guys, there really is a level of third-party support that Nintendo does need to start to reach that bigger demographic and to become more successful. And if we're Nintendo fans, we should only want to see them be that successful. We should want to see them be able to branch out and reach as many gamers, Nintendo and non-Nintendo gamers alike, as possible. And that's where those third-party games and those third-party companies do come in. And I think that that's a completely fine thing to accept. I don't think that that compromises anyone's dedication to Nintendo as a company. So that's why I've always been completely comfortable saying, yes, I want these games on my Nintendo console, and I think that Nintendo borderline needs them. I've always said that Nintendo could survive without them, but I don't really want Nintendo surviving. I don't want them struggling to stay relevant and profitable. I want them to do it with ease, because I know that they're that quality and that good of a company, and I believe in them that much. So, coming back to the topic at hand, can the Nintendo Switch run and actually play feasibly a lot of these third-party games? We know that the Nintendo Switch is less powerful than the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4. That is a shame, but I do believe that a system can be great if the games are good, and if the controller is good, and if the interface is interesting, and all of these different things, without this, this amazing power and next-level graphics and all these things. Obviously, that's the case. But of course, I do, like the idea of the Nintendo Switch maybe being powerful enough to run a lot of the games that come on the other consoles. And I'm one of those people that tends to think, you know what? I think that more often than not, a lot of these games that are coming out for these other consoles or that have come out in the last year, I really do think that they can run on the Nintendo Switch. I'm someone who wants to see, like, Destiny 2 and Battlefront 2, for example, come to the Nintendo Switch. Some people might want to say, oh, there's no way that the Nintendo Switch could run or play those games, and so you just got your head in the clouds there, it's not going to happen. And I understand that. Like I said, I will freely acknowledge, yes, the Nintendo Switch doesn't have the power in it to, 100% compete with the PS4 and the Xbox One, absolutely. But you know what? I feel like Nintendo designed the Nintendo Switch, and they've all but said this, and there's even been really cool reports from Capcom and how they helped Nintendo really design the innards of the console. I believe that Nintendo designed this machine to make it easy to compress data, however one, I guess, would do that, and really develop games that could run on any machine on the Nintendo Switch. I feel like that's part of what Nintendo is doing. We know that Nintendo worked very hard and very closely with third-party developers to say, hey, how do we make a machine that makes it easy for you to bring your games to our console? And there was even a thing that came out from Capcom, probably like a month or two ago, like I said, maybe a month ago, because I think this was after the Nintendo Switch launched, where there was, records of all these meetings that Capcom and Nintendo and other developers were having, and some of these companies, Capcom included, actually convinced and coerced Nintendo into including more RAM into the actual built-in unit of the Switch. Whatever that means, basically giving the system more power or more capability. And that was so Nintendo could bring their Resident Evil engine that they developed for Resident Evil 7 to the Nintendo Switch. Now, that's not saying that Resident Evil 7 is coming to the Nintendo Switch, although there are conversations about that as well, and I've discussed that on a video. But that does mean that the engine that runs that game is technically, because of Capcom and other developers' help, actually runnable and playable on the Nintendo Switch. And anyone who's played that game in person, that is an incredibly impressive game visually. The graphics are beautiful on that game, and sometimes it looks incredibly realistic. And if we think of that kind of engine being able to run on the Switch, and the fact that we know that, you know, the full, complete console and PC version of Unreal Engine 4 also runs on the Switch, suddenly you start to realize if a developer or if Nintendo took their time and coded everything the correct way to take advantage of how the Switch's architecture is put together, yeah, I believe that games like this could run on the Nintendo Switch. Games like Red Dead Redemption 2, I absolutely think could and should come to the Nintendo Switch. Overwatch was a rumor. I think that could and should come. The next Grand Theft Auto, Kingdom Hearts 3, Final Fantasy 7, you know, Dark Souls 3 or whatever, the Dark Souls collection. All these different games, you guys. Some people want to say, oh, the Switch just isn't powerful enough to run those. And I get that it's not initially powerful enough to run it the exact same way that these other consoles do. But as much as I don't understand the tech specs of console and PC components, and it might seem silly of me to say this, I do feel like I understand that the different architecture of a machine can make different tricks and different visual capabilities possible on different machines in different ways. So the architecture for the Xbox One and PS4 are very similar, so to make a game like Battlefront 2 run on those consoles, you put it together this way, and then you get that final product. But then you have the Switch over here that has completely different architecture, but architecture that's very easy to work with, which is what Nintendo was very proud about discussing when developing the Switch and, you know, bringing it out to the public eye. All of a sudden it's like, well, we just take these different tricks and do these different things on this different architecture, and we achieve almost, not entirely, you know, pay attention to the words I'm using here, almost the entire experience visually that we have over here on the Xbox One and the PS4. And so we have Battlefront 2 on those two consoles, and we also have Battlefront 2 on the Nintendo Switch. And of course, you can interchange Battlefront with a lot of these games. Now, I will also acknowledge at the end of the day, I'm sure that there are some games that might be absolutely 100% out of the realm of possibility on the Nintendo Switch. And that could be something like, you know, the Final Fantasy VII Remake maybe. And so, okay, I get that. You know, that's one of the sacrifices Nintendo chose to make. It's one of the sacrifices I'm willing to make as a Nintendo fan to support the Switch. If we could get a large handful of these big, important third-party multi-platform games over the course of the next few years on the Nintendo Switch and sacrifice a couple of the crazy, over-the-top, visually impressive ones, I'm okay with that. And a game that's very multiplayer-centric, like a Battlefront 2 or like a Destiny 2, that's totally fine for me, or an Overwatch. I would love to see those kind of things come to the Switch. Now, the other conversation, in wrapping this whole thing up, the other conversation that I could see sort of becoming a hurdle for making some of these games work on the Nintendo Switch, to be fair, is something that we don't quite yet understand all the details on, and that's games that rely on a huge online network, like two games I've already mentioned several times, Overwatch and Destiny 2. I think that visually, no matter how great those games look and how impressive they are visually, I really do believe that there's probably a way to make those games run on the Nintendo Switch. And again, I've heard a lot of people in my comments have said, oh, Overwatch is never going to run on the Switch, you're crazy. Destiny 2 is never going to run on the Switch, you're crazy. And I just don't believe that. I think that if we lived in a world where the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 were still having games made for it, and if Destiny 2 was coming to those consoles, I don't think anyone would question the fact that a downgraded visual version of Destiny 2 would still run on the 360 and on the PS3. And we know that the Switch is more powerful than those two consoles, so why would we not believe that the Switch could run a Destiny 2 if we would maybe believe, this is all hypothetical of course, if we would maybe believe that a Destiny 2 would run on the even older consoles. I mean, and we all saw with the first Titanfall, which is a very impressive looking game, that game ran on the 360 and looked and played pretty darn good, to tell you the truth. So, you know, a Titanfall 2, a Destiny 2, a Battlefront 2, all these games I think could be made to run on Nintendo's unique, easy to develop for architecture and still ultimately look and play okay, if not impressive in its own right for what that console is. But bringing back to the conversation about a game like Destiny or a game like Overwatch, the online network is the weird thing, because the Switch isn't a console that's just sitting at home plugged into your internet or connected wirelessly to your internet or hardwired or what have you. It could potentially be all over the place. It could be out in the wild, it could be in an airport, it could be on the bus, it could be at a Starbucks, it could be at your friend's house, it could be at your parents' house. I mean, it could be anywhere you are. And so how do you play a game that's so reliant on the ability to be online and playing with other people? How do you make that work on the Switch? And I do think it's possible, but I don't have that answer, you guys. That's something that I think a lot of us don't have that answer on, because we have very few games taking advantage of online play for the Nintendo Switch right now. And these games also don't so heavily rely and focus on the online network and connectivity. There's a lot of experiences offline for those games. And Nintendo hasn't rolled out their full, complete online service yet. And the paid version, and the mobile app, and the voice chat, and all these different things, the messaging system. However, we're supposed to really feel integrated into the infrastructure of Nintendo's online network. And once that's complete and that's released, then we can see, okay, how does this online network that Nintendo's created in this mobile app help us play a game like Destiny wherever we are, if we need to be able to get online and play even though we have the Switch just sitting in our backpack or in our purse or what have you. I think these are really important questions to ask, and that could be the kind of thing, more so than the power under the hood or the graphical capability of the Switch, that's the kind of thing that I could see being a hurdle for some games and certain experiences down the road. Like I said, Overwatch and Destiny 2, a game like a Battlefront or a Call of Duty that so heavily uses online network play, what happens with a console that's always potentially going to be portable and when people are moving around outside the world? And, you know, that's a different level of trouble Nintendo could get into in trying to get some of these third-party games on board. But either way, I think I'm going to kind of wrap it up here and leave it up to you guys to further discuss. I mean, at the end of the day, what I'm getting at here at the end of the video is that, yes, the Switch is less powerful than the competition, but I think that's still the developers of the industry and Nintendo working with these developers can say, hey, this is why we made the Switch the way it is. It's easy to make games look great on our console and develop in code for this console. So bring your Battlefronts and your Red Deads and your GTAs and your Overwatches over to our console and your Dark Souls. We want this stuff here. It's possible. And there's an audience on Nintendo's console for these games. And I think that that should be really exciting to a lot of these developers. So that's what it really comes down to, man. Yes, not every game would be possible on the Switch, but I think more than half of the multi-platform games over the course of the next couple of years could probably run on the Switch if the time was taken to make them properly for the architecture that the Switch is made out of. So, I don't know. That's it for today, guys. Tell me what you think. Do you think that this makes sense, that a lot of these games could come to the Switch and could run if handled properly? Or do you think that it's really just not going to happen? Nintendo in the third-party situation isn't going to be fixed the way we want and the way I want, and it's just going to kind of be the way it is. That's the Nintendo story for the time being, just like it has been for the last couple of years. Tell me what you guys think about this. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Robert from Live to Review, and I will catch you next time on another video.